A cat falls off a 32nd floor balcony. No net, no warning, straight down for over 300 feet. It should be over instantly. Instead, the cat lands, shakes itself off, and walks away with a chipped tooth and a bruised chest. That is not a rumor. That is an actual documented case from New York City. And it is not even the most extreme one on record. So what is happening in the half second between a cat losing its footing and a cat hitting the ground? Because whatever it is one of the strangest pieces of engineering evolution ever produced. And it lives inside an animal that also falls off your kitchen counter on a regular basis for no reason at all. Let's start with the case that made veterinarians take this seriously. In 1987, two doctors at the Animal Medical Center in New York City, Wayne Whitney and Cheryl Mailhoff, studied 132 cats brought into their clinic after falling from high-rise buildings, some from as low as 2 stories, some from as high as 32. The results should not have made sense. 90% of the cats survived. Even more bizarre, cats that fell from higher floors, above the 7th, actually had a better survival rate than cats that fell from lower floors. Read that again. Falling farther was safer. That single detail broke the assumption every doctor walked in with, and it forced them to ask an uncomfortable question. What if a cat falling from very high up is doing something completely different than a cat falling from very low down? Here's where it gets genuinely strange. The answer starts with something called the righting reflex, and it begins the instant a cat starts to fall. Deep in a cat's inner ear sits a structure called the vestibular system, a set of fluid-filled canals that constantly track orientation and motion, essentially a built-in spirit level connected directly to the brain. The moment that system detects the body is upside down or off balance, it fires a signal down the spine faster than conscious thought can process. The cat's head rotates first, eyes and inner ear locking onto the horizon. Then, in a motion no human spine could physically perform, the front half of the body twists to align with the head, followed a fraction of a second later by the back half. A cat's spine has close to twice the number of vertebrae relative to its size compared to a human spine, and unlike your rigid collarbone, a cat's collarbone is not attached to the rest of its skeleton at all. It floats, embedded only in muscle. That one design choice is what allows the shoulders to rotate almost completely independently of the hips, letting the whole body corkscrew into position in well under half a second. By the time most falls are even a few feet along, the cat has already rotated to land feet first. That part is what most people already assume they know. Cats land on their feet. Fine, that's obvious. But that reflex alone does not explain why falling from a 32nd floor is survivable. Landing feet first from that height at full speed would still shatter bones. The real answer is what happens next, and it's the part almost nobody knows. Once a cat is fully righted and falling in a stable position, something else kicks in. The cat spreads its legs outward and flattens its body, stretching the loose skin along its sides into something that looks almost like a tiny parachute. Researchers call it the parachute reflex, and it dramatically increases the cat's surface area relative to its body weight. Increased surface area means increased air resistance, and increased air resistance means the cat's fall begins to slow down instead of continuing to accelerate. A falling object doesn't speed up forever. Every falling body has a terminal velocity, the maximum speed it can reach once air resistance perfectly cancels out gravity. For a cat in that spread out, parachuted position, terminal velocity is somewhere around 60 miles per hour. And cats typically reach it after falling roughly 5 to 9 stories. And this is exactly why the 1987 data looked backwards at first. A cat falling from 3 stories is still accelerating hard when it hits the ground, body tense, still mid-correction, full force concentrated into a shorter, harder impact. But a cat falling from 10, 20, 30 stories has enough time to fully rotate, fully relax, fully spread into that parachute position, and stop accelerating entirely before impact. It hits the ground already at its slowest possible speed, body loose instead of braced, distributing the force across 4 spread limbs instead of slamming down rigid. Higher up sounds more dangerous. For a cat's specific biology, it can actually be safer. Now picture the actual half second. The cat slips off a balcony railing. For the first instant, there's pure disorientation, paws scrambling at empty air. Then the inner ear locks onto the horizon, and the head snaps into position first. The shoulders twist. A beat later, the hips catch up and rotate to match. The whole silhouette flips from falling sideways to falling straight down, feet aimed at the earth. Then, if there's enough distance left to fall, the legs splay outward, the body flattens, And for a moment, the cat isn't really falling anymore in the frantic sense. It's gliding, slowing, riding air resistance the same way a flying squirrel does, just without the extra skin flaps built for the job. The whole sequence, from slipping to fully parachuted, takes less time than it takes you to blink twice. This system wasn't designed with tall buildings in mind. It evolved for something completely different. Wild cat ancestors spent enormous amounts of time in trees, hunting birds along thin branches, leaping between limbs that occasionally cracked or gave way without warning. A missed branch 40 feet up in a tree canopy needed the exact same solution as a missed step off a New York balcony. Rotate fast, land soft, survive to hunt again tomorrow. Evolution didn't build this reflex for apartment buildings. Apartment buildings just happened to be tall enough to accidentally trigger the same system trees always had. But here's the twist that stops this from being a superpower. High-rise syndrome, the actual veterinary term for this phenomenon, doesn't mean cats are invincible. It means cats have a very specific window where the system works best, and outside that window things go badly wrong. Falls from just 1 or 2 stories are actually some of the most dangerous, because there simply isn't enough time or distance for the full rotation and parachute position to complete before impact. The cat hits the ground, half rotated, still tense, absorbing the full force in the worst possible posture. Which means every single year, thousands of cats are injured or killed falling from exactly the height everyone assumes is safest: a couch, a windowsill, a second-story balcony. The system that makes a 30-story fall survivable is the same system that makes a 6-foot fall from a windowsill genuinely risky if it happens at the wrong angle. So the next time your cat teeters along the top of a bookshelf or perches on a windowsill with the screen barely holding, understand what you're actually looking at. Not carelessness, not invincibility either. You're looking at an animal built with a genuine backup system for catastrophic falls, refined over millions of years in tree canopies long before there were windows to sit in, running silently in the background of every single leap, ready to fire in half a second the instant gravity takes over, whether that fall is 3 feet or 300. If this changed how you look at your cat's daredevil habits, hit subscribe, because this channel keeps digging into the real science behind the things your cat does without you ever asking why. And if you've got a friend whose cat treats every high shelf in the house like personal property, send